Money is energy and information because Bitcoin is money. And this changes so many different things because money has never really been information before. And money has never been energy before, right? Henry Ford theorized it in 1921. He said, let's have an energy currency. But it wasn't until the dawn of Bitcoin that we actually had an energy money. But that means you need energy because energy is money.
He warns, in a crisis, those with Bitcoin might become targets. History is full of narratives where certain communities get blamed for economic misfortune. If Bitcoiners appear relatively safe while others suffer, they risk becoming convenient villains. To inoculate against that, Mow argues we must spread Bitcoin adoption broadly. You don't want a witch hunt, you want many witches. In other words, make it normal, make it ubiquitous, so no one group can be singled out. Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space, and drop your comments and observations in the comment section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
If they have energy, even better, they can mine Bitcoin. Then you kind of wean them off the wheel of taking money from people, for lack of a more eloquent way to put it. So that's one thing. The other thing is, obviously, we want to be protected as Bitcoiners. We don't want our Bitcoin taken from us. We don't want to be blamed. And if you look back in history, there are many examples of, groups or ethnicities that are blamed for various problems, usually economic, right? Many examples in history. And I can see, if we are in a fourth turning and things do get bad, who do you blame? It is the Bitcoiners, because maybe we're okay. We're doing okay because we have Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the counter to that is really getting more Bitcoin adoption. And the government can encourage a lot of Bitcoin adoption. They can say Bitcoin is usable for payments, because most people don't want to go against the government, right? So if you can get the governments to embrace Bitcoin as money, more people will have Bitcoin. So if you think of it, you don't want a witch hunt. And how do you avoid or avert a witch hunt? You make more witches, right? More Bitcoiners.
Quick witches in the government.
Yes, exactly. And also, I think if you get the government to understand Bitcoin, and there are a lot of Congress people and people like RFK Jr. that understand it, it's kind of fixes itself. Bitcoin does change people's thinking and the way they view the world. And I think if you have enough of that and a critical mass of that, maybe it's possible to change government for the better. But it was kind of assumed that money would be bearer until suddenly it wasn't. And I think Bitcoin fixes a lot of this. And I think perhaps it was Trump's experience, being attacked by the other side that made him understand maybe a bearer asset is good. And you do see him piling into Bitcoin. Unfortunately, a bit too much in the crypto side, but nobody's perfect. But definitely it's on the right track that he is for bearer instruments. And I think this is kind of the way to fix that. But it's kind of sad that you have to pass laws for the right to having self-custody or other things like that, when it should be a given that you should be able to have money as a sovereign individual. The world is ready for money being information. So you missed my keynote after Sailor, but I was talking largely about the equation being changed now. Money is energy and information because Bitcoin is money. And this changes so many different things because money has never really been information before. And money has never been energy before, right? Henry Ford theorized it in 1921. He said, let's have an energy currency. But it wasn't until the dawn of Bitcoin that we actually had an energy money. But that means you need energy because energy is money. Like I gave the example before, if you have energy as a country, then guess what? You're a rich country and you have money. Yeah. But with Bitcoin, it changes it because it's not just oil in the ground or whatever. You could have nuclear reactors and have money too. But the information part is different because money as information means you can teleport money anywhere around the world. Capital controls no longer exist. And I believe right now we're seeing countries kind of grappling with that new reality. in Korea, they're trying to push for a Korean won stablecoin. Is that going to be only transactable in Korea and subject to the same limits, or is it free flowing? If it's free flowing, then you don't have capital controls anymore. And I think this is kind of where the battle is, like the internal, conflict is. Do we have free money, or do we want controlled money and controlled economies? And to that extent, you need more protections too. Like I was saying, like when you cross the border, if someone can take your phone and take your information or look at your information, they can take your money. And how do you prevent that? Because someone looked at it. How do you prove that they stole it? And ideally, as a Bitcoiner, if someone ever looked at your seed, treat it like it's gone.
Yeah.
Or if your device is compromised, then move your funds immediately. But as we get more and more Bitcoin adoption, that learning curve is applied to billions of people around the world. And I think you need some protections. And the protections really come down to more sovereignty, like making sure people are independent, reducing the surveillance state, right? Like what happens if a camera somewhere catches you with your seed phrase and the guy with the camera can, steal your funds? There's always that possibility. But the world we're going in is tilting more towards the surveillance side rather than to more freedoms. So this is an interesting point in time where we go, but definitely governments need to be cognizant of all these changes and, protect the people. At least you hope they will.
This is, in Mow's worldview, an eternal cycle. Altcoins boom, then collapse, feeding Bitcoin's dominance. He believes Bitcoin retains a unique structural advantage. Even as altcoins attract attention, he expects them to eventually fade in favor of the solidity, scarcity, and sovereignty Bitcoin offers.
There hasn't been much direct communication, and it's become sort of a loyalty test. Like, who do you trust, us or the IMF? Because El Salvador is saying they're buying, but the agreement with the IMF says we will not buy. And that is signed by the Minister of Finance and, at the direction of the president, unless he did it without the president knowing, which I don't think is possible. So there is kind of confusion now, and a lot of Bitcoiners are also asking questions like, how is this possible? But the reality is, like, somebody is not being forthcoming here, either the IMF or the Minister of Finance or the presidents. And it just comes down to this loyalty test now being pushed out. Like, do you believe the IMF? That's what a lot of supporters of El Salvador are saying. But then, El Salvador also said we're not buying anymore. So it puts us in a very difficult position. And there's a lot of uncertainty. Also, when they walked back the Bitcoin law, which was a provision of their agreement with the IMF, that was kind of...
So what was that, walking that Bitcoin law back?
They've had to soften the Bitcoin law. So basically, there is a Bitcoin law, but it is like
Voluntary, which is the legal tender.
Yes, it is in writing legal tender, but it's voluntary.
They're not enforcing it or making anybody accept it.
Yeah, they didn't, but now it's not in there anymore. And there are other provisions there weakening the Bitcoin law, but it does still exist in paper print format, right? But the whole process of that being rolled out, I think, frustrated a lot of Bitcoiners because it was just pushed out, in night, one evening, and no communications were sent from the government.
Yeah.
So you can understand how people could be frustrated if you move there with your family and you set up your life there, your business and everything. And the reason you moved there was because it was this law and adoption of Bitcoin, and things are being rolled back. It could be very frustrating, and I can understand that. Well, I think there is a place for it. And the world definitely is changing to embrace real world asset tokenization more so. But at the same time, the TradFi world is evolving too. So I think soon you'll have 24/7 trading of equities. And then the question really is, what is the benefit of tokenization? And I see a really interesting path from there because it's always a competition, right? The origin of stocks were bearer. You have a piece of paper and that's your stock in the company. I think real world assets could be very interesting if they're tokenized in a way that they can be bearer, because then you can have distributed ownership. But the question again is, does the system as a whole want that?
Well, it made it illegal, so I would guess no.
Well, yeah, so we'll to see, but going to that kind of a world is very interesting, not just the 24/7 trading, because I think the old system will evolve in that way. but having a real benefit, which is something is bearer, and being able to be okay with that. But like you said, it's not something that the system wants. But what Saylor's point was more so like, I think it's okay now to tokenize things, and the critiques on his talk were more about why are you talking about all these other crypto projects and why you can tokenize on those crypto projects, right? And also he mentioned Katy Perry a bunch of times, and it was funny because people were messaging me and saying, what was that about? Like, what was he going on about? And I was backstage, so I didn't really hear what he was saying. I listened to the talk after, so I caught most of it. But the problem, he was saying it didn't work before because I guess he was implying the administration was kind of hostile to that, which we talked about too, right? Like the Biden administration. But he said if you have like regulatory frameworks and there's safety for people, then you kind of remove the fun part of it, which then anyone can just go live and launch a token, right? And if you have the protections, then you're going into the realm of it being regulated by something like the SEC. Maybe it's like the Fund Token Securities Commission, Fund Token Commission or something like that, right? But then you do that and you add some friction back, right? And there's no way, I think, for any organization to do that. Like Saylor also said, 40 million businesses need access to the market, right?
One of his more controversial statements: Bitcoin could go to zero, not in the sense of complete collapse, but in the sense that its value relative to everything else becomes astronomical. In one tweet, he joked that Bitcoin could drop to 0.5 million, a pun on how people talk about zero, but mean a very large number. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown valuable, do hit like, subscribe, and comment.